right, everybody, welcome to the More Perfect Unity coming at you on this live Wednesday from the beautiful, 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 soon to be former place of my residence. Yeah, what happened to my audio? Oh, my goodness gracious. I had audio, it was working. Oh, you know what? I bet it's because I had to restart. Let's just move forward. We'll knock that down just a little bit. We don't need it to be that loud. So Donald Trump is live in Michigan, so we'll cut over to that in a little bit. I don't have everything set up. This is literally a microphone, a laptop, an external monitor, a Rodecaster Pro Duo, a Stream Deck Mobile, 64 button configuration with probably 45 buttons filled, and Pioneer DJ headphones for monitor. It seems to be working pretty good. This is a lot of what I wanted to do, but I wanted to kind of give you guys a taste of what I'm doing. There will be a show. We're going to work our way through it. And I'll explain a little bit about more what's going on. Of course, we'll get into a little bit of depth. And I do have a Zoom call open if you want to join in. Just, pop a message in chat, and we will do our best to get you in. I'm coming to you live via the Wave DX XLR microphone. This is a $100 microphone that has incredibly decent voice characteristics. I'm very pleased with it. It's very lightweight. It's metal construction, very good. And its frequency response has actually been pretty good for what I'm trying to do. And it does have pretty good off-axis rejection. Yeah, okay, sounds pretty good. Anyway, let me show you a little bit around. So I put up a little video on X earlier today to kind of give you a feel for it. But yeah, this is pretty slick. So we have, a little bit of motion graphics there. Place for people's titles. We could do a rundown, which is what we're doing here. Welcome to the new world. We also have our chat off to the side. Host has the ability to go full screen. We can also pop in with an app, and we can go back and forth with our apps here. And we also have, for video clips or for still images associated with whatever's going on. Can also bring in more than one guest. So a guest can take over. Right now, I'm just using the Zoom app as a guest, which would be true for guest one or guest two. You can isolate those guys so that they can have the full screen when they need it. And then, of course, if I want to go back and forth with them, we can do that. So if somebody joins a Zoom call, they will appear in the right-hand window there. And then additionally, we have a third way for that as well. So I'm kind of digging it. I like it. I like it a lot. But what I'd like to do right now is I would like to go ahead and just bring up a little bit of what's going on here. One of the things that I wanted to talk about in the More Perfect Minute segment was just the nature of the violence, the virulent anti-Semitic commentary that's being done. And this is a problem because if Iran and, Islamist nations all across the globe, if they're giving praise to the people who are quote unquote backing the innocent people of Gaza, the Palestinians, then that it's probably a bunch of crap. So what we really have going on here, and this is evidenced by some of the people, I can't remember the lady's name, but she's like a professional consultant, if you will. She markets herself as a consultant for how to protest. She's been arrested, 63, 70 times, something like that. And she was seen out there agitating the crowd. A lot of people, according to New York Police Department and Columbia University, said that there's a lot of people that were in that protest who were not students. There are people that are being paid $8,000 a week. Oh, sorry, for 8 hours a week. They were getting, I don't know, a bunch of money. And their purpose was to sort of gin up anger. And this is the same kind of stuff that happened, although I don't think people were as much paid for it because Vietnam was something that really was more emotionally triggering for a larger number of Americans. In 1968, when the police had to come in and execute a bunch of brutality on the protesters at the Democratic National Convention. So what we have here is a bunch of problems at a number of universities. Some universities, such as Florida, I believe Texas, and I think one other state, North Carolina, they went through and then they broke down and just ran roughshod over all of it and said, no, you're not going to do it here. You don't have a right to protest with violence. You don't have a right to advocate for violence against other people, which is what a lot of this is. And it's really about Marxism. So I think that Florida, Texas, North Carolina, they're getting it right. New York, particularly New York City, is still falling down. They sent the police in, which I did, for the life of me, I don't understand why they had to ride up a device and go through a second floor window when they could have just tore down the front door. I mean, if it were Donald Trump's house, that's exactly what they would have done. So, but they went in and they arrested several hundred people. Apparently, they're all out now. Nobody's being held for any kind of criminal activity. And they even had, interviewing somebody walking around New York City last night. Fox News had one of their younger reporters asking questions. This one guy says, it doesn't matter. They'll be out in 24 hours and they'll be out doing a thing. So nobody cares. So the only way it's going to work is if you actually charge these people and literally put the book on them. We talk about, the remarkable, stunning hypocrisy of people on the left who say that, January 6th was it was anybody that was there. That were there for the purpose of taking over the country. Everybody that was there to take over the country without weapons, except for the QAnon shaman, who never brandished it as a weapon. It was a flagpole for him. So compare and contrast that to all of the different riots that the left has fomented since, really, Ferguson. How much damage and destruction, how many people were killed, how many people were injured, seriously injured, all for a Marxist premise. And I think I'll leave it, there because I'm going to get to my next item, which it dovetails into the concept of Marxism and why the fundamental principles and beliefs, people like Marcuse, people like, Karl Marx, Engels, the idea here, Lenin, the idea here, and, and their modern progenitors, such as Cloward and Piven, the idea is that you attack a thing. You have to name the thing you're going to attack. So this is what they're doing, right? They're doing. We'll illustrate this with what's going on with the anti-Israel set. Most of these people could give a shit, to be honest, about what happens in the Middle East because it doesn't really affect them. Now, there are people who are from the Middle East where this does matter, and it should matter from a basic humanitarian perspective. The right of people to live in a free way is very important. But the idea that people are trying to promote or prop up the Palestinians as a cause celeb is really just a subterfuge for creating anger and emotional outrage within society in order to facilitate anger towards the governing body. And it's interesting that the left, who for so many years really didn't criticize themselves that much. I mean, they began to with Vietnam, but that was less politically ideologically oriented and more so just angry that we were involved in Vietnam to begin with. It was less about supporting communism or socialism. They just didn't want the U.S. to be over there because too many young people were going over there and getting killed. 58,000 people lost their lives fighting in Vietnam over a 10-year period, which is a pittance. Every life is valid, but it was a pittance compared to what we lost in World War II, about 400,000. So in any case, now what we see is that the people who were radical students in the 60s, they become professors, they have their kids, they bring their kids up in a very radicalized way. Those kids go to school, they become teachers. They started pushing this in the notion of college. It worked its way into high school. Now it's middle school and grade school. And this notion of wokeness, of DE&I, D&I, some people now call it culture and inclusion. It's just an attempt to obfuscate what is actually going on. And it's about trying to limit or kowtow down into a new world order kind of a concept. And it's really about wealth redistribution. It's about tearing down the things that make Western society Western society. So we have obviously a 2-week buildup for. We have a this is going to be a great movie. How the West Was Won. Yeah, it's fantastic. Over and over and over and over again. Bunch of movies. It's going to be great. 5 Westerns. The assassination of Jesse James. Oh, yeah. Let's see where that is. That going to be on Fox Nation? Yes. So if you don't have Fox Nation, go ahead and get it. They put some decent content out there, but they're going to have a series of 5 old-timey Westerns. It's going to be great. Anyway, back to my point. This notion of Marxism is really less about helping people. It's more about making people mad. If you notice that everything that the left does, it's about ginning up anger towards other Americans. You know, when Republicans or conservatives talk about illegal immigration, they're not doing it to be mad at the people who want to come here. They're mad at the government who is failing in one of its most primary duties, which is to preserve, protect, and defend the nation against foreign invasion. And you can't, I don't want to call necessarily what's going on at the southern border an invasion, right? Because that would be like the Democrats calling January 6th an insurrection when there was no insurrection. Are there crimes being committed in both cases? Certainly are. Are there crimes being committed by the government? In the case of the former, the illegal immigration, sure. They're just redefining terms, right? And this gets into this notion that if you have to define a thing. And if you can change with impunity the definition of things, then you can create a narrative. And that narrative can be used to manipulate people who, frankly, were never taught for probably 2 generations now, have never been taught the notion of how to rationally think through a situation and develop an ability to understand that situation and bring it forward and know whether it's true or not true. There's a stunning lack of people's ability in this country to be able to dissemble an argument into its component pieces and then argue why those pieces are logical or illogical. And this is one of the reasons why I think it is impossible for anybody to convince me that Marxism writ large is a thing that will benefit human society. It is antithetical to our constitutional notion of freedom, personal property, and the ability to be relatively free to seek your fame and fortune. Yeah, I'm not going to go the ANCAP way, which says that, everything is, we need absolutely no government or no formal instantiated government, and everybody's just running freewheel. There has to be some minor amount of regulation in order and rules in order to hold society together. I think the problem is that the rules are being made by the federal government and less at the state government. And our founders had believed that our founding principles were that the central government would do very limited amounts of things, often called the enumerated powers. And then the states would have a larger chunk of powers, and the person, the individual, would have the most amount of power, subject to the limitations of, enforcing your will upon other people in a violation of their rights. And the idea with that was that the closer the government was to the individual, the more likely the government was to be responsive to the needs of the individual or the collective at the community level. So person, family, town, county, state, federal. And what we have done is kind of flip that over. The individual has almost no power other than the ballot box. And as we've seen in multiple elections, 2000, the Democrats thought that the election was stolen by George Bush, although subsequent data collected and analyzed after the 2000 election validated that George Bush actually won by more votes. And this is, of course, in the land before we really had a big, ginormous internet. We didn't have social media. We didn't have smartphones, right? We barely had cameras. And then we sort of fast forward into the current paradigm where everybody's got a camera. Everybody can do a 15-second clip, 30-second clip, a 1-minute clip, throw it up on social media, throw it up on TikTok, where the Chinese will, ingest that content and make wonderful things and do predictive and analytics, and then figure out where people are pissed off. And then they'll start, educating, quote unquote, people who may have seen a video to see more of videos of that type. And then next thing you know, you're fomenting a bunch of anger. This is all about the Chinese unrestricted warfare thing. Again, using socialist Marxist principles in order to create and sow dissension within a population so that it becomes a right-hand, left-hand situation. The right hand doesn't know what the left hand's doing, but both hands are mad. And the self, or in this case, the nation, ends up fighting itself, and it becomes less able to understand what is going on in the world writ large, and it makes America a target. More of a target to our enemies. And make no mistake, we have a bunch of enemies, and they're all driven by some kind of either theological or Marxian principle. And some of them, they just want to be more powerful on their own. I mean, I don't think Russia is particularly a secular nation, or a religious nation. Not to make fun of the Orthodox Church at all, but there are fewer and fewer people that identify as religious outside of pure theocracies. And they're basically constrained or they'll be killed. But the idea is that the individual, rather than being subservient to a God or a higher power, is now subservient to the state. And if you ever wondered how close you are to being a financial battery for the government, you only exist within the confines of how much tax revenue you can pay. So anyway, that's That's my thought there, and why Marxism itself is indefensible. So the Krasenstein twins, Krasenstein, Brian and Ed. I think somebody on X today referred to him as the effeminate younger and older brother or something. Here's a couple guys that have sort of made their money hyping crypto. And it even got to a point where they had to enter into either a consent decree, or they had to give up a bunch of, or some property in order to make their case go away. And essentially, it was like a hype, a pump and dump kind of situation. And now why is that relevant? Well, it's relevant because both of these guys hype the Democratic Party like it's going out of style. A matter of fact, if we just we'll just change our look here, our view here, just a minute. See what we can get out of this. So, Trump just attacked electric vehicles in Waukesha, Wisconsin, in his rally in Waukesha. Biden's given a tax credit to rich people. Test said 29. Yeah. Well, actually, in California, you don't get a tax break. You don't get a tax break for a Model Y. And the idea that somebody is buying a $29,000 car, now that's with the rebate, right? To the extent that there is a rebate. But the Model Y is a pretty shitty car, by the way. Teslas, generally speaking, are not that great from a build quality. I was talking to somebody who has several of them, and I test drove one when the Model S first came out. Now, it was a cool looking car. It was kind of an interesting thing, but there's no infrastructure to support it. It is hyper expensive to fix. The battery weighs 2,000 pounds. The infrastructure impact, not just the environmental impact, the infrastructure impact, the roads. You're putting an extra 2,000 pounds on four wheels, 3,000 pounds if it's a truck. And then think about these big ginormous semis that have an 8,000 to 10,000 pound battery pack. And there's a limitation about what you can do, right? When you cross bridges, there's, the weight limits. Yeah, you see these things like out in the country, you see these, 14 tons. Well, 14 tons is like 7 vehicles. Okay, maybe. But everybody's thinking, okay, well, if the road is on solid bedrock, maybe there's not a problem. But I was out in California a couple of weeks ago driving up and down the 101, which is a state route that goes up and down the Bay Area and, works its way down to Southern California. And I thought I had a problem with the car I was driving, because as I changed lanes, the wheel would sort of jump. So I thought that there was a problem with the steering knuckle arm or whatever. As it turns out, that the weight of traffic, particularly in the summer out there, which is not that super hot, but when you have engines that are basically sitting around doing nothing because it's a parking lot during rush hour, the heat from the engines and stuff, it just warms the road on top of the sun. And you get these, for lack of a better word, asphalt gullies where the wheels are in the vehicles. So when you're changing lanes, you have to be aware of this And if you're not from there, it's a little tricky. The first time it happens, it's a little unnerving. You sort of figure it out and you get to go with it. But you have this notion that all this extra weight that goes into these cars is there. So, as an example, this is the reality of things. But when you look at what the brothers Krasenstein do, they're talking about, they take and do this thing that Democrats often do, liberals do. They'll hit a thing, and then they'll go after one little aspect of it, right? The Model Y starts at $29,000. That is not the best. Well, it may be the best-selling car that they've got because it is cheaper. But Ford lost $1.3 and change billion. That's $132,000 per vehicle sold. So the Model Y maybe not the car for rich people, but the rich people are the ones that are getting that were getting the big benefits, because when they first started doing all these little handouts, the only people that could afford new cars were the rich people. And remember, if you go back to even 2009, 2010, when Obozo bailed out the auto industry, and they did this thing where they had cash for clunkers, and people would turn in their cars, they'd get a little bit of money, and rich people would get that money and they would put it into another vehicle. And then they started giving people the EV credits when, before Solyndra and all these different companies went tits up. The only people that could afford to buy those cars were rich people. And then what happened to the market for cars that average to poor people couldn't get because they didn't have good credit, particularly those that maybe lost their house in the housing collapse. Those people were stuck. Well, that was part of the plan too, because they wanted those people to do public transportation. So, even scrolling through your manufacturers are making a killing because of subsidy, even though they aren't selling. They are not selling because in some states, California, for example, when they cut the subsidy, and I think they went back to actually putting them in, most of the EV cars that I've seen, I saw a crap ton of them in California. So California is subsidizing it, but they're going in debt as a state to do it. And to be honest, cars aren't really selling because, like I said, Ford Motor Company sold, I think, 9,000 electric vehicles last year, losing 132,000 per. And they don't. Most EVs don't have the range. They have the range of about, on average, about 230 miles. And when he's just making an argument here that he stopped for 20 minutes to charge his car when his kids peed on the way back. That's it. Now, I don't know exactly where he lives, but across the state, I just don't, I don't even know where he lives. But the notion that EVs perform everywhere like they do in Florida, or that you can charge a vehicle sufficiently in 20 minutes. The number of high-speed chargers, like the superchargers out there, is nothing. I saw something in the news that it would take 900, it would take 20 years at 900 chargers per week in order to find enough capacity. And then the question of, okay, well, so you've got some place to distribute now with all your charging stations. Where's the electricity coming from? New York City alone, I think in 2020, the estimation for their power draw was 20 terawatts per day. if everything were electric. They don't have the capacity. And they got even less capacity when they turn around and they have less capacity when you take the notion of Biden's new rules that are effectively going to kill fossil fuel power plant production. So literally illegal for drivers more than 14 hours straight. Well, yeah. So if you are a tandem driver, you can double that. And a Tesla Semi, which nobody can afford, it's got 500-mile range. For how long? Normally, after about 3 years, it's about an 80% drop, an 80% left capacity. So it starts out 100% full in about 2 years, 3 years. You're going to drop down to about 80, 85% is your max charge, which means you're now cooking on 375 miles per day. And it's an 8,000-pound battery on the Tesla Semi. And when you got to replace that battery, good luck. So the Krassenstein brothers are just insane. But all they are is they're just shills. They're being paid through some entity in order to prop up Joe Biden, prop up the Democratic Party. Meanwhile, they've taken all of their money that they've gotten through shady means, and they bought themselves real estate down in Florida. And then they sit down in front of a camera and they think that they are somebody special, but they're just chachas. And they are part of a whole class of people who bomb Twitter, X, and other social media channels, thinking that they are, somebody to be listened to, but really they're just really failures. So this whole notion of, not a very good sound dampener there. The whole notion of, let's just go back here. The whole notion that we've got people that are covering for terrorists. Ilhan Omar, she said everybody should have a right to support, or the freedom of speech to support genocide or not support genocide. She said that about Jewish students at Columbia, where her daughter got expelled for racist, anti-Semitic bullcrap. I sure hope. Now, she's running, a Democrat is running against her in Minnesota. I don't know that person's politics, but I can almost guarantee you it can't be worse than Ilhan Omar. AOC walking around Columbia the other day talking about, people have the right to be able to speak. They're making these loose affirmations that, no, guess what? We're not going to say it's okay to be anti-Semitic, but you got a right to say what you want to say. Now, I'm very close to a free speech absolutist. I think if you want to say shit that is anti-Semitic, roll your money, take your chances. Don't advocate people to be harmed. But if people don't want to talk to you because that's the way you are, well, roll your money, pay your money, take your chances. I personally find it disgusting. And I don't think that we were meant to be in a position where we should go out of our way to pick on people because of who they are, what their religion is, their sexual identity, orientation. I don't think that we should specifically target individuals. Now, if somebody goes out like Dylan Mulvaney and basically makes themselves a target for ridicule, fine, I got no problem with that, right? We have ridicule is something that goes all the way back to Socrates and Plato. Irony is a powerful tool in order to illustrate a point. So if people want to people want to shine a white hot spotlight on themselves and make themselves a target because of their own stupidity, who am I to stop them? But what these people are doing, what Chuck Schumer, a Jewish person, I don't say Jew as a pejorative. I have Jewish friends. Really, I just call them my friends. They happen to be Jewish. As I have friends of virtually every demographic possible. Except I don't think I've got a friend as a Satan worshiper. I think it would be very difficult for me to cross that bridge. But anyway, the notion that that these politicians who were so adamant about January 6th making excuses for, not outright condemning. Their lip service condemnation is not the same thing as, calling the governor and saying, Governor, as a senator in Congress of this state, I'm very concerned about the lack of response by the state and the local government with respect to these Islamo-Nazis and these Marxists taking over and creating havoc on a college campus of higher learning and infringing upon the civil rights of United States citizens and foreign guests who happen to be students from, say, Israel. I'm surprised that Alvin Bragg, the DA for Manhattan, where Columbia is located, hasn't announced in similar fashion like he did a couple days after those cops were kicked by the illegal immigrants. I'm surprised that DA Bragg hasn't announced a new campaign to go after the hundreds and hundreds of non-student agitators who were paid by entities that say are in some form or fashion connected to George Soros and his Eugene Levy-looking son, Alex. The fact that they're not doing it just means that these people are covering up for Hamas. They're covering up for terrorists because the Biden administration and Democrats know this. They are in a world of hurt. And God forbid that Trump isn't convicted before the November election, or that he's not in a position. Because my guess is that, my guess is that if Trump gets convicted in New York City, I feel like it's about at least the average of the voters in New York City that he'll get convicted, because it's just patently an unfair thing there. I mean, all of them are unfair, but assuming that even if Trump appeals any kind of a conviction, like he's doing with the Letitia James nightmare, the $175 million evaluations case, or the E. Jean Carroll defamation cases. The notion that Alvin Bragg is not going to do everything he can to prevent Trump from being a valid candidate, including, asking for an immediate for Trump to be remanded into custody upon conviction. Now, the fact that Trump is the leading candidate, he's a former president. Former presidents enjoy Secret Service protection for life unless they waive it. How exactly does D.A. Bragg feel he's going to make that happen? Evening Death. Hang on a second. Do I have something for you? A little record scratch. I don't know if you could hear that. Could you hear the record scratch? I don't know. So if Bragg is able to secure his conviction, and I feel like he probably can get it done just because of the venue, not because of the case, everybody knows that this is all pure politics. And it's one of the reasons why Trump, I think, started out a year ago at 39% to whatever. He's now 45%. He's 6 points, even by CNN's crappy polls, he's 6 points ahead of Joey B. A job is just a paycheck, Joe. Stiff as a board. Next week he's going to try out for Crypt Keeper. I'm sorry, it's just like being kept in a crypt. Because I don't even know. I don't know what they're doing to prop him up. But anyway, the Democrats, because of their fear of losing in December, they if they lose Michigan, I mean, there's just one or two of the battleground states that he won in 2020. If just one or two of those goes the other way, it most likely will mean, and they're early states, right? The results of those will be known before midnight. Trump will most likely landslide it. Yeah, well, there's more than, it's, let me tell you what, we are at stake for every election for the next 20 years. Democrats, if they're allowed to come back into power, they're going to inexorably continue to push. They're going to push climate change. All of this stuff, all of this spending that Biden did, this $9 trillion that he has pumped into the economy, it didn't go to infrastructure. It went to special interest groups. It went to climate change initiatives. It went to rules-making process. And it's not just the money that the government says we want to spend this money. It is the revenue that they are collecting now on the backs of small business, forcing small business to pay the bill so that other rich businesses or that doctors and lawyers can get their student loans paid on the backs of plumbers and electricians. Plumbers and electricians are most of the time they're union, particularly up in the battleground states. They are unhappy at Biden's plan as announced by Kamala Harris. Kamala, camel toe, whatever. I wish I had my rim shot. Hang on a second. Oops. There it is. All right, there we go. Rim shot. Regardless of whether or not you graduated or what degree you have. And and Biden campaigns on it. He campaigns on it. That the Supreme Court smacked him in the face, but he said, I'll just keep going around you. It's the same thing that Obozo did. Obozo knew that he couldn't do DACA. He didn't have the authority. Supreme Court later under Trump said, yep, you can't do it. But then Trump said, well, if I can't do it, I'll just undo it. And then the Supreme Court said, nope, you can't because you violated the Administrative Procedures Act, which says that you have to do 180 days. Like you have to issue a rule and you have to delay the implementation for 180 days in order to give people, I don't know, some chance to do whatever. But if DACA was unconstitutional, how could undoing DACA be unconstitutional as well? This is the idiocy of what we have in the federal government, which brings me to a personal subject, which is really not related to anything I'm doing. But this section it's personal. It's personal for me. I recently have ended in the process of finalizing separation of a relationship that literally is 25% of my life. And it's a big chunk of your life, but it's not your whole life. And I talked a little bit about this last night, but I'm telling you what. You think you know people. But people change. You think that you have somebody figured out. You think you know what motivates them. You think you know how to reach them on a personal level. And then you find out years later that it was all an act. That there really wasn't a connection. And you struggled not to find a way to be bitter about all of it. And I try to laugh at the circumstance. For context, I had a divorce in 1990. I was married for 3 years. That was a pretty bitter divorce. Had a child, didn't really have any money, didn't really have any property, was just a child. And the ex took my daughter, went to California. Well, I actually went to Washington State, subsequently moved to California, didn't know about it. I went through a lot of legal processes, contempt of court for not paying child support. I wasn't paying child support because I felt like I wasn't being allowed to see my daughter, so I made poor choices. And eventually, and I was very mad, very angry about the whole thing. And eventually, it got to a point where I began to learn about the legal process. Now, I'll be really candid. I was moderately interested in politics before 1990. I became a little bit more interested in politics, and then I became incredibly interested in politics after this one time where I was in court on a bench warrant for not paying child support. So I was a contempt of court charge. And I went in and I was trying to explain to the judge that if I'm not able to see my daughter because my ex was violating the custody agreement, the custody order, it wasn't an agreement, it was an order of the court, that I didn't feel like I had to pay child support. And I was pretty angry. And my attorney tried to get me to, have more composure. But I was young and stupid, younger, more stupid. I'm less younger now and less stupid, I'd like to think. But I told the judge, I think that sucks. And the gap between the last syllable of the word sucks and the gavel hitting the little wooden plate that the gavel bangs on couldn't have been more than about 2 milliseconds. I think the judge may have, in fact, anticipated. I might have been giving off signals. So the judge immediately remands me into custody, a la what I think Alvin Bragg would like to do to Trump. This was a Friday afternoon, and since the court office was closing, there was no possibility of having a bail hearing or whatever. So I ended up spending the entire weekend in jail with people who were accused of like crimes, and the jail was overcrowded. So there was like four cots in this sort of a small room, and there were 6 people there. So 2 people had to sleep on the floor. Yeah. So I was sleeping on the floor with my back to the wall. So I get through the weekend and I get into court, and the judge brings me in. I'm one of the early cases. So he brings me in and he asked me if I have anything to say. I said, not anymore. And from that point forward, my life took a different turn. And I realized that there was more power in working to gain knowledge about the system. The system in this case was in Virginia and many other states, except for Louisiana, I think one other state, I can't remember what it is now, but the notion of child custody and jurisdiction at the state level for 48 of the 50 states is predicated on a federal law called the Uniform Child Custody and Jurisdiction Act. And it makes its way into various state law under different code sections. I became, for what at the time would be considered a paralegal with respect to family court law. And I found out that many of the things that I was going through were patently illegal, according to the law, according to federal law, according to law in Virginia, and also illegal in California. Now, here was the rub. Just because the law says that you have a case doesn't mean you can get your case heard. By this time, I had gotten to a position. I'd graduated college. I was making good money. I transferred out. I was actually living in Nebraska at the time, working for a big outdoor outfitter as an IT engineer, senior technical services manager, producing all their creative content, et cetera, et cetera. So I was now in a position that I had means. I could afford a lawyer. But no, I couldn't get a lawyer. I couldn't find a lawyer who would take the case. So I'm now living in a third state, was divorced in the first state. Ex and kid moved to fourth state, and they live in a fifth state now. So they moved. So I tracked everything down. I did all that I could do to understand what it was. And then I set a court case in Virginia, which was the place of the original jurisdiction, because that's what the law said I could do. So I go to court. I am armed with court cases that involve clawing back children that were taken illegally overseas from California, from the original divorce decree in Virginia. I mean, I literally mapped out 4 or 5 cases. And I said, based on these rulings, I am entitled to relief, that I should be able to have my daughter because this other parent violated the law, deprived me of my federal civil rights, deprived this child of her federal civil rights. And I went through 20 minutes of this back and forth, pitching my case. And the judge, Judge Ferguson, will never forget him. Really nice guy. He said, Mr. Rowland, I will tell you that your case preparation today was better than 90% of the attorneys who would come before me on any day. But here's the rub. The law says you're correct. The problem is there's scarcity of resources. Because in order for you to get relief, we would have to ask for a federal marshal and a state police deputy or state sheriff, not state sheriff, but a city sheriff, to travel to California and to meet with people in the county of California, the sheriff's department and the DA in the county where she lived, in order to both charge her under California law, which had a very similar, almost word for word statute, again, based on the underlying law, and remand your child into custody and then have her transported back to Virginia. So I was like, I almost said, well, that sucks. But I remembered. And at that point, I gave up. Now, I didn't give up caring about her. I didn't give up trying to search or find her. Matter of fact, I did connect with her after she was 22, 23. Still haven't seen her since she was 2.5 years old. Haven't talked to her since she was 3. We've done some email communications. The relationship that I have with my daughter is, safe to say, pretty much non-existent. But it's because of how the laws were written, and the difficulty of trying to solve such a complicated problem, particularly when you are fighting, and this is many, many years ago, so you're fighting in Virginia this notion of something called the tender years doctrine, where young children, particularly girls under the age of 2, were presumed, absent any fact, presumed to be better off with their mothers. Now, I would never say that my ex-wife was intentionally mean to our daughter, but her behavior vis-a-vis me, visitation and stuff like that, had a lasting impact, because my daughter doesn't want to have a relationship with her mother now. She doesn't have a relationship with her aunt, any of her cousins, and that goes up and down the coast of California. And I have to think that the nature of our breakup, which I The manner in which we broke up, the cause of the breakup was her. The manner in which we broke up was a contributing factor, I am sure, to my ex-wife's subsequent reticence in, trying to be a good parent to the absent parent, or a good person with respect to the absent parent. So that I go through that long diatribe of an explanation to say that that was a transformative relationship for me. And what I took away from that was that there is no relationship that you can ever possibly be in that should ever make you feel that way. Now, it doesn't mean that I haven't had very good relationships with other women. I have. And I have learned to, lack of a better word, is have more emotional armor. I really developed a sense of humor. And I mean, basically, my divorce attorney, after she quit the practice of law, I had heard that if you had a female lawyer, your chances at divorce with children in Virginia were better for you, better for the individual, particularly if you were a male. So okay, fine. We go searching for a lawyer. I had to borrow $5,000 from my parents because I was just out of the Navy and wasn't really making any money at all in 1990. And and my ex-wife's mother searches around and finds a female lawyer. Okay, so at least the table will be somewhat neutral. No. Her lawyer was a substitute judge on the very court that was hearing our case. So I'm like, okay. So to add insult to injury, after the divorce proceedings were done and all the paperwork and everything was fine, my attorney quits the practice of law and decides to become a comic on a cruise ship. And if you were trying to write comedy, or if you're trying to write a sitcom, you just can't do it any better than that. So it took me a couple, 3 years to work my way through that, right? I mean, there's a lot of anger, a lot of bitterness, a lot of stuff. And it was like I want to say it was about 2002, really, when I finally got to the point. So my daughter would be about 14 at the time. When I finally got that through my head that, you know what? You just got to keep pushing. You got to push through. Whether it's relationships, or it's politics, or it's doing home chores, doing homework, doing research for something for work, trying to figure out how to clear out your garage because you got to make room for something else. Or it's time to sell everything and just, get a camper or buy a boat and go fishing. You have to be willing to let go of things, which means you always have to be able to prioritize the things that are most important to you. So this 15-year relationship that I'm in, I'm not going to get into the details of it because it was an up and down relationship. I struggled trying to make sure that I could continue to understand the things that she as a person needed. She's not without challenges, as we all are, subject to our own limitations. So even though we said we wanted to be amicable, the nature of the dialogue back and forth. So this house we spent a bunch of money on. She put more into it because she had kind of a windfall. Her dad was a surgeon, put a bunch of money away. So she put the down payment into the house. And then we were paying a house payment. We were actually overpaying it. So we paid down 22% of the mortgage in 4 years. July will be 4 years. That's not bad, right? Not bad. But we didn't have a lot when we came in because we lived in rental houses. We had some stuff, right? We bought more stuff because we had a bigger house. This house was the biggest place we'd lived in together. So we bought a lot of stuff. And we bought it, we split it. We bought TVs, we bought furniture. And when we come to talk about separating, I said, look, basically I just want the last TV that we bought and the equity that I have in the house. That ends up being something like, I don't know, $30,000. Well, she can't do anything about the equity because it's my equity. But she literally said, I paid half of that TV. And then I remember back to that conversation with the judge where he didn't care. If I ever saw my daughter, I was going to pay child support to go to jail. So I thought about that in that particular moment. And I said, keep it. If it means that much to you, keep it. Now, it's also important to note that she has maintenance medications that she takes for a chronic condition, but it's not a serious condition. But some of that is very expensive. So while we're going through all this thing and she's telling me what I can't have, I'm saying I will continue your health insurance until you get a job or until the end of May, whichever comes first. Now, this is 4 months now. So, the end of this month, it all runs out. You would think that an individual would at least appreciate that. Not, don't kiss the ring. Don't think I want to try to stay together. I don't. But it was just a way of trying to show compassion for somebody that I had spent 15 years with, almost 16. And all I get instead is just verbal abuse via text message. And at some point, I'm going to write a book and I'm going to, it is just a litany of easy going back and forth, this, that, you want to do this, sure, you want to do this, and then raging accusation upon raging accusation, and then response back and forth with a text message form, which is really a horrible way to communicate. If you have a problem with somebody, pick up the phone. Don't argue with them over text message. It's just not right. This is one of the reasons why everybody calls Twitter acts a cesspool, or social media generally a cesspool, is that it's much easier for people to attack other people when it's via text. You don't get the nuance, right? It's either all caps for yelling or it's fucked up emojis with turds or whatever. But it's not the most conducive to deep conversation. Yeah, well, I'm writing a book about the experience of this relationship. So it'll come out, and I don't know if I can go insane. I just don't think I have the patience for it. But The long and the short of it is that um, this Sunday, well, Sunday night into Monday morning will be the last day that I will be in this house. And the whole time that this 2 months we've been going through this, 3 months really since we were mediating, I paid for the mediation. I said, these are my conditions. This is what I want. And really, it was very limited. And then after she said I couldn't have the TV, I said, we'll keep everything. I don't care. I just want my equity. And then she's balking at the equity. I'm like, well, it's my equity. It's my money. So the sword of Damocles that now hangs over her head is that she's trying to do an assumption loan because she couldn't, she's got additional money and her dad has got money. And I got no doubt that if it came down to it, he would finance it and pay her. He would probably give her the damn house, which doesn't bother me. It does kind of suck, though, that this house is now worth over $100,000 more in 4 years than it was when we bought it, and I'm not going to see any of that. So she's got the sweetheart deal of sweetheart deals, and we weren't married, so there's no domestic partnership in Wisconsin that I'm aware of. So I literally I'm walking out of this in a very financially raw position. As far as wealth and stuff. Now, my retirement's my retirement, her retirement's her retirement. There's no threat of either of us coming after that. Neither of us wanted any of that. So I'll give her credit that she wasn't trying to literally screw me over to that degree. So this assumption loan is going to be her and her dad buying me out. And her dad is basically just going to be the co-signer on the note. He's no doubt that has sufficient assets to do whatever. So she's going to keep a 3% mortgage. Me, none of us right now will ever, nobody alive right now will ever see a 3% mortgage ever again. And because I just turned 60 years old, does it even matter? So I'm going to be a homeless vet as of Friday because I'm actually traveling for work to Kansas City for the week. So I'm under covered roof. A Navy friend of mine is going to let me crash at his house till I sort of figure out what's going to happen. But I asked for my equity in advance so I could at least put it in one of these 5%, 5.5% CDs or money market accounts that, interest rates are going through the roof. I could put it in there for like 3 to 6 months and generate, $400 or $500 of interest. And if I don't buy a house, I could just leave it in there. I'm not going to pay any capital gains on it because it literally is just the money I paid in. I'm not getting any gain. I'm literally walking out, flush, even. But I could at least put that money to work in the interim. No, I have to wait until her assumption loan is approved, which can take 3 to 6 months. Now, it's been about 3 months, so it could be another 3 or 4 months. And there's no reason for her to not give me the money. But she's just not going to do it. So I said, well, I could be making money on the side with it, right? I could invest that. I could do something to get myself. She doesn't care. So this person that I thought was a good person with some health challenges has made me really question whether or not I could ever be in a relationship with somebody with those same issues in the future. And I will be honest. I feel a lot differently about her today than I did 15 years ago. Because 15 years ago, I would never have thought she would be the kind of person to do what she has done. Alone plus cats equals forever. Yeah, except I travel too much. I don't know if you're saying for her, she has a dog. She's got a boxer. Oh, this is the interesting part. So in the mediation, one of the first things she said is, I'm keeping the dog. It's a male boxer. He's great, by the way. Tut. I named him. I named our other dog too. So about a month and a half ago, she sends me a text message and asks me if anything should ever happen to her, would I take the dog? Now, she's 10 years younger than I am. So the likelihood something happens to her before me is, from an actuarial table's perspective, pretty thin. Especially since everybody in her family lives into their 80s or 90s or 100s. Apparently that upper Midwest Norwegian Swedish gene, although she happens to be Czech and whatever, but so I'm like, my intention is really to get as far away from wherever you are as possible. So no, I don't think I would be able to take the dog. And now we sit at this precipice of stuff like, I'm working, I'm traveling. I spent 5 days in April in this house. The rest of the time I was on the road traveling. And she's yelling at me. She comes over to pick up her golf clubs because she's in a golf league now. Well, we've been in a golf league the last 3 years, but I'm not in the same league now because, well, we were on the same team and it just would be unworkable. But the idea of being remotely near her or her family, who have spent really 12 to 14 years trying to poison her against me, and I sat by her side, picked her up, did everything I could to sort of help her find validation in her own self. And I just don't really need to cross paths with any of them. I have an immense amount of respect for her father. I had an immense amount of respect for her mother. Many of their grandchildren, I like a lot. So there are good people in there, but none of them are her sisters. Her brothers were good people. Her oldest brother died almost 3 years ago. 2 years ago. Oh, no, it'll be 3 years this August. He was a good guy. Her brothers are good people. The brothers-in-law are good people. The sisters, not so much. But c'est la vie is as they say it is. And even though I spent 15 years with her, it wasn't my whole life. I had a life before. I'll have another life after. And the one thing I would share is I think that the idea that you are forced into a change that maybe you weren't thinking about and how hard it could be and what that might do to one emotionally or physically, because our emotions can manifest in physical ways. Doctors will call that a vasovagal response. You just have to push through and understand that the only limiting thing in your life ultimately is you. So, under this notion of something called Scaled Agile Framework for Enterprise, it's, if anybody out there is a propeller head, understands Agile, it is a process of sort of preserving your ability to change all the way through a process of design and architecture, build and test, and then release, put it out in the market. One of the key concepts in a DevOps and a planning mentality for Agile is that you have to always be willing to ignore the sunk cost. Just because you've put 25% of your life into something doesn't mean it's worth continuing. And the healthiest thing that you can do is to always be aware of where you are in your life, and to make sure that you are grounded in who you are, so that when the unexpected change, the unplanned for change occurs, that you have enough variability in your response that you can take it forward in a healthy way for you. And even though, I will tell you, even though my current ex is treating me in a way that is an anathema to what I thought I knew her as, I am going to subsume away any ill feeling for that, beyond the frustration of knowing it could have been easier with just a little bit of an attitude change on her part. And there might be people out there who will say, well, you could probably have done better too. Yeah, for sure. But I have a text message chain that people can look at eventually, and they'll see where the vitriol in the breakup comes from. That'll be part of my catharsis later. But having said that, 25% isn't your whole life. Now, you may have noticed here that my rundown changes as I move through parts of the show. You know what that does for me? That keeps me on somewhat of a track. No, you're 100% right. My divorce really taught me. I had a lot of hate, a lot of anger. I was a redhead. You can't tell now. But I was a redhead, Irish, Scottish origin, English. I didn't deal with problems very well. And the loss of freedom for that one weekend taught me more about understanding one's role within a power structure than any class I could have ever taken in college. So now, I won't say I don't get angry. I think anybody who says they don't get angry is a liar. But I try to gauge, why am I angry? And decide whether or not it's something that's valid, invalid. Is it an inconvenience? What can I do if it is an inconvenience? What can I do to make it less so? And at the end of the day, realistically, right? I mean, come on. You just got to be able to move forward. Well, I think if you live long enough, right, you survived the idiocy of your youth long enough. I think God, whether you believe in God or not, I think God gives us all wisdom, but it's like covered up in stupid. And you have to cut through enough layers of stupid to find it. I would probably say that I'm the dumbest smart person I think I've ever met. I had a lot of stupid. We're all stupid when we're young. That's why we're all lucky to be alive at 50 or 60. I jumped off a second-story building with a trash bag parachute as a 7-year-old. Me and my cousin, we had an old go-kart, rickety old go-kart, and a 45 horsepower Mercury outboard engine that we took the engine off the motor, and I think it was a 4-to-1 gear reduction ratio, because that's all the gears that we had in a bicycle chain, not a motorcycle chain, bicycle. And we mounted this thing up to a go-kart, and there were no brakes, and there was no clutch. You could only pull start it. And I'm here to tell you, and the only thing you had to do you could steer. The only thing you could do to save your life was there was a rope, a piece of twine we had on the spark plug. And we rigged up basically a kill switch on the spark plug so that we could pull it and it would, no, seriously. So my cousin gets his older brother to pull start us with I don't know, it was like a early 70s pickup truck. So we're tied on to the trailer hitch. And there's a hook. And we were smart because we said, okay, it's going to bend this way. But then when we shot past it, it would just come off. But the trick was that we had to, when it kicked, it just went. There was like 0 to whatever the max speed was, right? And you had to whip to the side. You had to whip to the side like that. So you would be parallel to the truck. And then you would shoot by it pretty quickly. And then it was lucky this road was a dirt road in a poor county in Virginia. And it was nice, long, and straight. So it was kind of like a drag race. We should have died on that. But we had so much fun. And I learned the value of thinking your process a little bit further forward. Maybe one of the reasons why I'm an engineer today is because I look at everything in the context of what would I have done as a 2-year-old or as a 10-year-old. There you have it. So this last little bit here is just to say that I got involved with streaming about 4 years ago, 3.5, 4 years ago. Colonel Dan would live about a year. So the first year I was streaming, Colonel Dan was still alive. And I really enjoyed getting into conversations with people and arguing nuance, right? Sometimes blunt, sometimes more nuanced, but being on panel discussions, getting into the streaming thing, figuring out how OBS, Open Broadcaster Software, or vMix, or Streamlabs or whatever, how these different programs worked, and what was so compelling about the medium, about social media broadcasting. It's a huge, huge business. I have, as a result, I put about $15,000 to $20,000 of personal equity into equipment, laptop, soundboards, mics, lighting, programming, different services, because I wanted to try, and I think some people will just stream and it's very basic, and that's fine. They're looking at games, really, they're just their camera's an inset on top of whatever they're doing. And I've kind of started begin to do that as well with Flight Simulator, and I'm working up DCS, but my office I'm packing down my office. So my gaming rig is in a box. It's probably going to get replaced before I fire it back up. And I might just convert that box into a pure streaming. So everything will feed into that gaming computer. This laptop will feed into that computer, and then that will become like the master streaming computer. But there's a lot of money that has gone into this, and it's kind of sad in a sense that the Twitch political community has kind of dried up. Now, I'm broadcasting on 5 different platforms simultaneously. So I'm on Kick, Rumble, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, all simultaneously. I make money on Rumble, and Twitch, but I'm not making a lot of money. And obviously, I'm not doing it to the point where I think I'm going to get $15,000 a year out of it. I did this really as the hobby, as the educational exercise of streaming. Now, I have made some good contacts in the industry. People have sent me things. Elgato sent me this mic. I got the Facecam Pro before it came out. I got a Stream Deck pedal. I mean, I've got a lot of stuff. I have been given some stuff to evaluate and provide feedback on, which I have done. I've provided that to the company. And for the stuff that I really like I'm not a big fan of the Wave 3 and the Wave 1. I thought that those were kind of bull. But I am a big fan of this microphone. And of course, if you watch my show, I've got that big broadcast Shure SM7B, which is probably one of the best vocal mics out there. I really like that mic. It's a great mic. It's my favorite, actually. But this is a great mic if I'm going to pack it, because it's small, it's compact. I can take it on the road with me. I can do whatever. The setup that I've got here right now, I've got one computer that's behind the one I'm looking at right now that just basically shows me whatever the active app is. Whether it's, Twitter, Twitch, whatever. And front is just my laptop. Excuse me. Oh, terrible to yawn on the air. It's just my laptop. This microphone, it's on a stand. I got a small portable stand that I can set on a table. And I got a mini version of my production console, Rodecaster Pro Duo, which is like a little 2 microphone setup, so I could do an AB interview somewhere, do that with somebody. Take calls via Discord, telephone, video call, Discord, Zoom, Teams, WebEx, whatever. I can do them all because I know how to route the signal. When Elgato came out with the Stream Deck, covering the mic, the Stream Deck Mobile and the ability to create up to 64 buttons, I was like a pig in heaven. I do have a windsock for outdoor interviews. I've got a $1,300 NTG3 shotgun mic. So I can definitely do that. I've got the best dead cat you can find. How you doing, Jixer? I'm gonna be in town Saturday. Are you in St. Cloud? You might have to meet me over in Rogers, Minnesota. We'll go have a beer. Yeah, 45 horsepower go-kart, man. It was great. But anyway, I'm not really good at the grift, obviously. I'm not the kind of guy that's going to roll out to I'm not going to roll out to Ukraine and pretend like I'm on the front lines. Although I will tell you, this guy that is a bartender at Buffalo Wild Wings in Hudson, Wisconsin, his son was a mercenary. He's coming back to the States. So he was a mercenary over in Ukraine. So there is a pretty good possibility that I'm going to be able to interview him for the show. I'm going to try to get that set up. He comes back, I think, in like 4 or 5 days. Oh, sorry, the 4th or 5th of May. So, yeah, he was a merc, and he told his dad he's had his fill of that, and he's coming back. So it's going to be kind of interesting to see what his perspective is. He's a young cat. So we'll see what that is. Maybe that'll be an interesting thing for people to understand, because people that have never served or people that have never been in the line of fire, it's not always easy to understand what motivates people to do something. So I think there's a story there. No, go ahead and work till you're dead, man. That's a great plan. Just make sure it's something you like doing. So me, what I'm probably going to end up doing, I thought about one of two ways. I was either going to get a tow behind with a satellite dish on it, or I was going to get a boat, 50-foot boat with a satellite dish on it. And I was just going to travel and spend, a week in different places and broadcast about it, about the experience, and write a book. But just to stay involved and engaged, right, with a community. And then one day you'll just see me pitch over on live stream. And then you'll know. And then everybody will get one of those, like those, little thing where you pull the string at the end, it goes poof. But I'd like to travel, but I don't think I'm going to have the kind of income in retirement that's going to let me travel the way I would like to travel. So I will probably end up doing consulting work, and trade this bastion, such as it is, of knowledge that I have in exchange for, like, hotel and per diem. I'm a relatively smart guy, and I have marketable skills. So with that said, folks, I want to let you know that I am very appreciative of you guys. And I know that while I was more engaged with my immediate prior relationship, there was a period of time where I was not broadcasting because, frankly, it just wasn't worth the headache I had to get through at home. But you'll notice that my streaming, if you go back and look, my streaming has picked up considerably, because I no longer have to worry about somebody being angry because I'm streaming or talking politics. So I'm totally fine with, doing the thing I do. And just want to ask you guys that if you are out there in a space where, if you're on Twitch or whatever, and you got a Prime Gaming subscription or you want to throw bits or whatever out there, go ahead and kick that in. Anything that helps. Basically, if I can just offset, I need really about $900 or $1,000 a year just to break even. All the computer equipment that I've got, all the hardware and everything, that's all sunk cost. So on a capitalization thing, that's like a 6 to 7 year, rollout for that to pay off or be fully depreciated for the kind of work we're doing. But I pay for Epidemic Sound. I pay for Stream Labs. I pay for Kick. I pay for, I pay Restream. I pay, I've got various subscription services that I pay out for. So I'm looking to try to grow what I do, build, continue to build an audience. MPU is free. You can have me for nothing, man, because my mouth won't shut up. But if I can break even on the other stuff, then that just makes it more enjoyable, more fun. Am I going to stop doing it if I don't get support? No, because, I wouldn't have gotten this far into it. Oh, Freedom. No, it's Freedom. F-W-E. Freedom. I'm inspired by the yellow school bus and Venn diagrams. But if you can drag people along the way, tell them about me. I am the More Perfect Union on, The Real MPU over on X. The More Perfect Union on Twitch, at the More Perfect Union 4812 on YouTube, and the More Perfect Union on Rumble and Kick. Yeah, Kamala did say that. Kamala, Chameleon. Who knows? So I'm gonna leave you with this thought because I'm not sure when I'm gonna stream again. I'm gonna be out of town next week. Most likely, I think it might be early June. Well, second week of June 8th through the 22nd. I'm gonna be in Malaga, Spain. I may stream next week because I'll be in Kansas City, so I might stream from the hotel. I might take this very rig that I've got here and stream there. I'll still be in the Central Time Zone for the United States. I need to sort of make some plans, potentially this summer, about coming out and visiting some people. So that certainly means that I got to hang out with Jixer because he's the closest, and then work my way down south. And I think, Grumple, you're in Texas somewhere, so... Where is Grumple here? Is Grumple still here? Is the Grumple Stillskin still here? Is he or is he not? Tell me. Nobody's going to know. It's like a 30-second delay, but anyway, I want to try to get out and visit some people. Has anybody heard from CTV? Is he still doing like the does anybody talk to CTV? The last time I talked to him, he was going to be doing some RV sales. But that's a couple months ago now, so I just don't know. What happened to my music? I had music. Yeah, hang on. 1 second, guys. Jeez. I did have music. What happened to it? It just got to the, what the hell? Oh, that's why. Oh, dude, so stupid. Really bad. Okay. I get it now. So they give you like 4 or 5 songs in the front end for you to pick from. And if you don't, I've got on my main computer, I've got this thing that will automatically sort through and give me like, 10 million songs, about 4 hours. but this wasn't that. So anyway, there's some background music. Yeah, he might be working, so. The More Perfect Union on Kick. It's, hang on. Don't they have the thing where you got to do the channel? Let me see. Kick. So I am... One second, I'll tell you. Let's see what we got here. What? That's probably not me. Let's log in. Yeah. Oh my God, it's so crazy. Let's see, authenticator. Everything's dual factor authentication, guys. It's fantastic. You have to now because people are crazy. Let's see. Sure. Where's my stuff? Have I been kicked off Kick? No, I'm still there. And oh my God. Yeah, it says that I'm live. But I don't see the damn web page, so. And I'm looking at it on my phone, so if I did it on my computer, which I can't do right now, it would tell me exactly where I'm at. I told CTV that he thought I didn't know how to use a cell. I'm like, no, dude, I just don't want one. No. Yeah. Yeah. Yep. So when I broadcast on all those channels simultaneously. And because I use Restream to broadcast out my feed, I will see any of the text chats and stuff that get fired in from any of those channels. Now, if I respond, you'll see it on screen here when I've got chat up. But some of the things like Kick and Rumble, they're not bidirectional. And I do process in my Discord channel in the conservative, independent, and liberal, progressive text chats. Every text from every show goes into all three of those channels. So if you want to go back and look at any things that were done or said or whatever, you can do that. And of course, I probably need to go through and set up a bot or something like that to make sure people don't put any, stuff that'll get you banned, because apparently people have had their servers hacked out from underneath them. So, but my friends, I want to say thanks. I appreciate you hanging out for, I don't know, how long has it been? A while. Appreciate you guys hanging out with me, and let me go through sort of like the dry run of the new format. And I just want to let you know that if we do it like this, right? And then we come back here, and this is the new world order. So for the More Perfect Union, if you haven't seen my trailer kickoff on X, go take a look. Look at all the stuff I've got there on X. I posted a little video earlier today, which is kind of gives the rundown of what this show format looks like. If you got any thoughts or ideas, please get that back out to me. Do a response or something like that. Send me a DM on X is probably the easiest way to get a hold of me for any kind of consistent stuff. And we'll talk to you soon the next time that we see you here on the More Perfect Union. You guys be good. Take care.